Hello and welcome back to Underlab. I realise this video is sort of the tail of my theory about what happened to Frisk at the end of the pacifist route. However, after making that episode, I've come to several realisations about Asriel, with one stark possibility that many of us may have not considered. While we may all think we know what happened to the young dreamer and what his ultimate fate was, is it possible that in an incredible twist, Asriel is in fact still a furry royal goat monster after the game's ending? To add to that, is it possible that he might even return to society after his traumatic past and recent events? As unbelievable as it may seem, I have an explanation, one you might even find pretty convincing. So let's find out what really happened to Asriel at the end of Undertale. You probably think you already know exactly what happened to Asriel. After all, after the battle with him, he tells us that he's destined to turn back into a cold-hearted flower who's unable to feel love. Apparently the souls were the only reason he was able to maintain his true form, namely that of a young boss monster. We see what happens without the souls, as when we first meet Asriel, he's a flower filled with determination, specifically Flowey. So it seems that Asriel is destined to have an unhappy conclusion no matter what ending we choose. On the genocide path, we slaughter the flower he inhabits. On the neutral route, he becomes a Mega Flowey and never learns anything from his encounter with you. On the pacifist route, there's finally some shred of hope as he regains his senses and stops attacking you, but then reveals that he's destined to revert back into a soulless killer once more. It seems that Asriel never gets to enjoy a happy ending within Undertale. However, there's one possibility that could change everything. What if he was lying to you at the end of the pacifist route? Maybe he told you not to look out for him and that he'd turn back into a flower just to get you to go away. It surely must seem incredibly unlikely, but consider for a moment how traumatized Asriel must be. He's lived a life of inflicting misery and pain upon others, and now having regained his senses, he surely realizes how terrible everything he's done is. He must feel absolutely awful. So awful in fact that how could he possibly return to his family and the rest of monster kind with the knowledge of how terrible he's been, even if he isn't really going to turn back into a flower, even if he can still control himself. It seems that Asriel would rather impose exile upon himself than see the faces of those he's hurt so many times over as a flower. While this may seem like just a possibility, let's take a look at the evidence that could support that this really is what's happening. Should we return to the first room, during the epilogue of the game, we find Asriel. There we can have a lengthy conversation with him, which ends with Asriel asking if we have nothing better to do. Such seems quite uncharacteristic of him. Why is he so impatient for us to leave? You would think surely that he'd be happy to spend his final hours as a monster with the one person who knows everything about what he's been through. It's understandable that he may simply want to be left alone, but asking if we don't have anything better to do makes Asriel come across as if he doesn't actually want us to be there, while he may just want us to walk upon the surface with our monster friends. Maybe in reality he just wants us to leave him to his solitude. If he feels that he can't return to his family after what he did, then it's no surprise that he just wants to be left alone within the ruins. What about the character Flowey himself? It's clear that Asriel's conscience is still buried away within the flower, as it rarely resurfaces even without the power of 7 human souls. On the genocide path, he transforms himself so that the flower resembles Asriel's face, as he believes that the fallen human wouldn't harm their former best friend. While he was wrong in that belief, it's curious to note how Flowey seems to still care for Chara, or Kara. Up until this point, we've been led to believe that Flowey feels nothing other than his own determination to stay alive. Crying and cowering before us, it sure seems like there's a bit more than one dimension to Flowey's character. Does this mean that more than just a part of Asriel remains within Flowey? Perhaps, under the right circumstances, he could be restored to normality, like we see on the pacifist route. While he has indeed lost the souls empowering him, surely having been reminded what it's like to feel empathy, he'd be able to care once more. Also, something that doesn't really make sense is the fact that he doesn't immediately turn back into a flower. If what he says is true, we know that all the souls return to their original hosts, and so why would a remnant of their power remain within Asriel, allowing him to maintain his form as a dreamer for a little while longer? It actually seems more likely that really he doesn't want to return to the world he left behind after causing so much chaos, possibly out of guilt and fear of ever doing it again. We should also consider that Asriel's soul was briefly merged with that of Chara's. It isn't clear what happened to the fallen human soul afterwards. By the looks of things, human souls are near enough indestructible, but we can't find Chara's anywhere. Perhaps it remains with Asriel, granting him strength and determination. This could be part of why he feels he'll never be able to return to his family, as he isn't truly a monster if he's able to retain determination. Determination is also a force which enables evil within Undertale, as much as it allows for good, which would explain why Asriel is afraid of reverting to his old ways around the people he loves. Another peculiar thing is that Flowey begs us to not perform a true restart should we start up Undertale again after beating the pacifist pacifist route. This is because he knows we can't possibly obtain a better ending. While this is possibly proof that Asriel becomes a flower once more, note how he hasn't lost all emotion and in fact still cares enough for everyone else that he tries to stop you from potentially ruining their lives. Even if Asriel can't maintain his true form, he can still feel love, which is something he said he had to lose control over. Therefore, either way, things are looking up for Asriel. The pacifist ending doesn't seem quite as depressing as many of us likely felt when it comes to him, as, monster or not, Asriel's soul seems to be intact. This means there's a pretty good chance that he could be saved one way or another should Toby ever decide to make a sequel to Undertale. In other words, I feel there's overwhelming proof that Asriel didn't just become a heartless flower again after the pacifist ending. There's strong reasons to believe that he may have simply imposed exile upon himself, and even if he was telling the truth, it appears that after becoming flowery again, he still retains some of his senses. This means that rather than every ending resulting in Asriel being unfairly punished, on the pacifist route there's a good deal of positive speculation we can make as to what really happened to the young dreamer. If he really did exile himself like I suggested, then perhaps with time he could eventually return to monster kind. Once he's certain he'll never cause them harm again. With the barrier within Mount Ebott shattered, there's no reason that he'd have to stay there against his will forever. But it certainly might be a good place for him to spend some time in quiet reflection and contemplation of his wayward actions up until now. After all, what makes up a monster's soul? With humans, it's always one defining characteristic, such as bravery or integrity. With monster souls, they're entirely white. There's several good explanations for this. Perhaps they're like combinations of the 7 traits that the humans represent, and therefore as the colours on the spectrum blend together, we eventually get white. This could be because monsters all have a little bit of kindness and bravery etc. within them, unlike humans, who need only have one distinguishing trait and a great deal of determination. It could also tie into the fact that monsters are made of magic more than they are physical matter. When Asriel absorbed seemingly hundreds of souls, he also gained great magical power. While this could be the very definition of soul magic, notice one interesting fact about the encounter. When fighting a Mega Flowey who absorbs 6 human souls, he uses human weapons against us, such as flamethrowers and bombs. Asriel, on the other hand, uses a barrage of magical attacks, which could be the result of having the magic of hundreds of monster souls powering him. Surely if enough of it remains after the battle for him to stay as a dreamer a little while longer, it wouldn't just filter out of his body as if he never had the power in the first place. In other words, Asriel clearly possessed more than enough magic to sustain the body of a monster once more. While the exact way magic works within Undertale is never really explained, it still seems odd to think that if Asriel had any residue magic left after the encounter, that it'd simply slowly seep away from him. After all, how did he reach the first room again without anyone noticing that he was there? He must have teleported, proving that he still has some magic. So in all likelihood, it really does seem like Asriel simply feels great remorse for his actions and needs some time alone after everything he's done. While the trauma might never be forgotten, the good news is that Asriel's story doesn't end here, and there could be a bright future ahead for him if he can find the courage to return to his family and friends. It seems the hopes and dreams of Undertale fans have been answered at last. Many of us want Asriel to enjoy a happy ending, and I think I've finally found a perspective that shows that he does sort of get one on the pacifist route. We can only imagine how surprised Toru and Asriel will be to see their son again, let alone everyone else. What do you think? Do you agree there's a few holes in what Asriel tells us, and that it's a possibility that he remains his small furry self after the end of Undertale? Maybe there's even more evidence to support the idea. Well, let me know in the comments. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't become a flower and then go into hiding, and I'll see you next time. Before I go, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to my patrons, my head scientists Asgore and She, Cameron Vigil, Kay Jensen and Sophronius, and my Underlab scientists Crystal Sleet, Nicholas Dux, Armin Arlett, Marisa Ray, Corey Kidwell, Yushio Koroni, Sarah Wydra and Emily Gatewood. Thanks to the generosity of every name you see here, this channel is able to keep going. If you enjoyed this video, please consider checking out the Patreon link below, as well as the video that explains why I'd so massively appreciate your contribution.